when investigative reporters do work on a story like this, there's a tremendous amount of information that we don't use. We're distilling lots of data, lots of information, lots of stories to tell the best story. So another obvious platform for this was what were we going to do on the web. That was purely a web-based product. So Michael Corey, who's going to come up and explain what we did around that. But I just want to make one point, because a lot of times I get asked about, WikiLeaks and what were differences. One of the things you've heard several times tonight is the raw data and documents we got had people's phone numbers, social security numbers, all kinds of personal information. We were extraordinarily careful not to make that available to the public, and that's one of the things Michael was involved in. We did our own redaction. So, Michael, why don't you explain what you did? Thank you.
All right, might take a minute to switch over the video here, so there's not a problem. So I can say in the meantime, while this is coming up, I'll talk a little bit more about this. But yeah, the redaction process that Rosie mentioned, oh, here we go, was very involved. I mean, one of the things that's kind of tricky about a story like this is half the point of the story is that in some way these people's privacy was violated. And so the discussion becomes, okay, so are we going to put these reports up on a website? And that was a process of figuring out the best way to handle that. But yeah, I'll come back to that actually, because now we're here. So I'm going to show a little bit from our project website, which we called the America's War Within, which was actually kind of a broader idea, but actually ended up fitting really well for this specific investigation. The website features not only the main stories from the investigation, not only the Mall of America story, but also sort of the intelligence spam angle as to did government agencies view this data as even worth anything? But in addition to those stories, obviously we wanted to add a lot. Wanted to add a lot of context. One bit of context we wanted to add, which is tangential to the immediate story, but something that I want to give a plug for because you're not going to find this anywhere else. Since the creation of the Department of Homeland Security, the federal government has started to do a lot of auditing and reporting of Homeland Security. And a lot of these documents have been out there in the ether somewhere. They've been public. But what George and Andy did a great job of doing was kind of collecting all these that they knew would be interesting, and they put it all together in this big database that other people can hopefully get information out of. So it's an interesting angle on the reporting is like our profoundest hope is that somebody else finds something in this data. Like we certainly look for stuff in here, but I would love it if somebody else found something in the data that we collected. But it allows you to take stuff that was spread out in 100 different places and just say, oh, I want to know about like documents related to Oregon, and you immediately get things that mention Oregon. A way like this, there really was no good way to do this before. It's brought together a lot of great information. But I want to talk specifically about what I think is really the crown jewel of this investigation, which we've spent a lot of time talking about tonight, and that's the documents themselves. As I mentioned, it was one of the questions we have in this is, do we even run these documents? But I and others really felt like we're doing the entire investigation a disservice if we don't actually show people some of these documents. I mean, they're kind of the football in this whole investigation. Is it appropriate that what's going into them or not? But and as George mentioned, NPR did great work in kind of compiling all those together. We ended up putting 125 of those reports into a database that you can see here that Margot Williams, the database correspondent from NPR, put together. And it allows you to see data like he was talking about, where you can see that the vast majority of these people who were in these reports were minorities. Another thing that I think is really interesting is that half of the reports that we obtained were forwarded on to some other agency. And so kind of looking at where the line is to why something got forwarded, like I can't find a pattern into why things were forwarded. And also you see this interesting here is that the mall security they have surveillance cameras, and these reports include video footage or photos of people. So not only do people not know that they're in reports, but there is video of you that might be getting sent around. But if you get a chance, check out the website, because poking through these reports is really interesting. It lets you get like really at the meat as to what's in some of these documents. And the range of incidents that shows up in these documents is so varied and interesting. There'll be some that seem on its face to raise some serious concerns. There's one person who was stopped, and they checked his backpack, and he had a DVD that was called "The Secrets of the Quran," and this apparently is what generated the report, is the fact that he had a DVD about the Quran in his backpack. And so you have incidents like that. You'll have incidents where there were a number of Kenyan teenagers running around the mall together, just kind of mall walking in a way. And they were stopped, and one of the things that the security officials listed as suspicious was that the one who spoke the best English, because a lot of them didn't really speak English very well, they said he was, quote, overly cooperative, and this is what was suspicious about his behavior. But on the other end of the spectrum, there were documents that you can see kind of that there are other documents. Like there was one where a father and his son were walking near the runway to the Minneapolis airport, which is actually is right across the street from the Mall of America is the Minneapolis airport, and he reported that he saw two people who were using a laser rangefinder to point at aircraft that were landing and taking photos and taking notes. And yeah, I mean that's something you probably would want to know about, like why someone was doing that. But so like I said, if you look through the database, you can see that there's a tremendous variety in the suspiciousness and just kind of the circumstances of what's in here. But we really wanted to get into even more detail with that, and with some of the most interesting documents, we wanted to post the entire document. And as Rosie alluded to, the question then becomes, what do you take out? And so we actually went through quite a detailed redaction process, where in most cases we remove the subject's name, we remove all the identifying information about them, but there was stuff like their date of birth, their home phone number, their employer, the home address, and not just the home address of the subject, home addresses of the witnesses, date of birth of the security officers involved, like in some cases cell phone numbers of the officers involved, and all this came through unredacted. And I did want to give a shout out to LaToya Tools, our intern on the project, who spent a lot of time redacting the documents, because she basically showed up at our office this summer and we said, welcome to CIR, here's a bunch of documents, and by the way, they're going to be on NPR, so you probably should do a good job. And she did a great job with the high-pressure first assignment, and we were able to present some of these. And then for the people who specifically we had on the record, who we had talked to, and who we obtained permission from, we posted their full report, including their name, because at that point it would be kind of silly, like we interviewed them, it's kind of silly to not say that this is their report. And so there's several of these in here too, where including people you've already seen. You can see Brad Kleinerman's report. You can see the Qureshi's report in here. But I wanted to go into to look at one of these in detail, so you do get a sense of what one of these looks like. This is Robert Walters, who is a guest services employee at the mall, and we used a tool called Document Cloud, which journalists know a lot about. I don't know if anyone else uses Document Cloud really, but Document Cloud is a great tool that was developed by people at a number of news organizations that let you not only post documents, it automatically scans the text of the documents about as well as anything does that. You can also like attach notes to it and share it across lots of different platforms. It's a great tool that we didn't used to have. But you can see this report here. This is a 10-page report. Some of these reports go on for like dozens of pages. For much smaller incidents, there'll be dozens and dozens of pages, and some of them are just a page long. But you can see here, the cover sheet here says that this report was filed with the Minnesota Joint Action Center, Joint Analysis Center, which is a fusion center, right? Okay. And you kind of page through, you start to see more of the information here. Some of this is all record-keeping data, and then you start to get into the meat of it, where you can see here some of the information here that we've had to redact out here, like addresses, phone numbers, related parties that weren't involved. This document is interesting because it actually names a lot of different people in here that are supposedly related to the incident. So the incident in question here is actually kind of two separate incidents. But Walters was an employee in the guest services division at the Mall of America. So he's like the person who's going to be at the information desk and give you help. And he had apparently been telling his according to security officials, what he had been doing is he had mentioned that he had been missing work because he had to work with his political party, which was part of the RNC Welcoming Committee. And for some context in that, the Republican National Convention was in Minneapolis this year. I think this was in 2008. And so there was a lot of direct action going around that, a lot of protesting. But the way the security report casts this incident is interesting. So if we look at just a detail from the record here. So I said, on July 23rd, 2008, Mall of America Security learned that guest services employees Robert Walters was a member of the RNC Welcoming Committee, which they characterized as a local anarchist group of the RNC, which makes no sense, but I think we know what they mean, by methods involving criminal actions. And so that was part of it. So they were saying, oh, this guy's part of an anarchist party. And then the other issue, though, was another employee found a note at his workstation that describes the, quote, authorization, incineration, burial, and/or general nuclear obliteration of the parcel known to those at or near the first floor north guest services desk as the tall trash can of Satan. So obviously this became known universally as the trash can of Satan report in the newsroom. And then Spielman, who's the guest services manager, asked Walters about the note, and he said he was talking about a stinky trash can. But clearly the security officials thought that these two things in combination were worthy of writing a report that then got forwarded on. And I just want to end by kind of showing again, like George was saying, is one of the things that was most interesting, and one of the reasons we really wanted to post these reports is to illustrate the contrast that I think you're going to see between the way that the mall characterized this incident and then Walter's experience of the incident. So we're going to take a second to rotate back through here, but we're going to show you what I should emphasize is a extended and somewhat raw version of the video that we posted on our site. So it's not broadcast quality editing, but actually this is great because you can see video of not just Walters, but you can see Kleinerman on video and extended video from Qureshi's wife on the site. So if you get a chance, do check it out. But we're going to see Robert Walters' video in just a moment here.